Today in the third episode, I want to talk about what makes anxiety worse. There are things we do that may feel normal. It may actually feel like, everyone does it. But in fact, that is like putting fuel into the little flame of anxiety and just brings it more to the surface. It is not helping you to feel calmer and more centered. It actually creates the opposite. So I'm talking about the no-nos when it comes to anxiety. See, often we want the anxiety to get better, to disappear. But we are not thinking about what we are doing to let it actually be glued into our mind. It's a little bit like with confidence building. Everyone wants to feel more self-esteem, but we are not necessarily thinking about how we are undermining the foundation of self-worth on an ongoing basis. So I'm going to address self-talk, which is something we all do. And because we're talking to ourselves, we are not crazy. We just have inner dialogues at all times. And it's important to notice what are we talking about and how are we responding to thoughts that are rather critical or maybe even scary. The other day I talked to a client and I asked her to write down the negative thoughts that she knows creates anxiety, but she also knows is holding her back from, looking for another career, for, having the courage to also commit to a relationship rather than just hopping around and ultimately to give her a greater sense of self-esteem. So when she was writing down the thoughts, she became more and more frustrated with the exercise. She became more and more irritated because she said, all I'm doing is just focusing on the negative. I'm not really feeling that is very productive because I want to think positive. I want to think, into the future. I don't want to be, stuck in all this mental gunk of self-criticism and what-ifism. And on some level, yeah, it appears right? Why should you notice or pay attention to something that doesn't feel good? Well, the problem is that even when we are not paying attention to those thoughts, they're coming up. They're there. It is like a baby screaming, next door, and you just don't want to listen to it, so you turn the TV on loud or you put earplugs in. Well, the baby keeps on screaming, and so does your anxiety. It wants your attention. And so rather than just pretending it doesn't exist or feeling that this is something that we should just avoid and push aside, it is much more effective to look at it calmly, to analyze it. What does it really have in common? What are the thoughts that reoccur over and over again? And then also find out what to do with them, how to respond to them. Now, I'm going to tell you a little method that really, really works well if you're using it maybe for 3 or 4 weeks. It's going to reduce your negative self-talk by about 80%. And that is counterbalancing it with the heart, not with your head. You don't want to do an inner debating club with yourself and then basically just end up frustrated because nobody seems to win. You want to be the source of that, what I told you in our second session, the source of trust, the source of safety, the source of compassion for that part of your subconscious, that anxious part of your subconscious that doesn't really believe it's okay to be seen, or it's okay to do what you want, or it's okay to take risk, or it doesn't just in general feel safe in the world. And so when you are writing down your negative self-talk, and maybe there are thoughts like, I'm gonna probably freeze when I have my next date, or when I'm giving a presentation at work, or it may be that I always going to be alone. No one going to ever love me. Or it may be that this spot on my skin is probably cancer and I got to die. So these thoughts that obviously feel anxiety triggering and also feel very limited, write them down. Look at them. Don't necessarily buy into the emotion. Don't necessarily believe that they are telling you the truth. And here is a trick that makes it so much easier for you to not go down this drain of negative thinking, which we know, you start with one thought and then the next comes and next comes and next comes, from freezing at the presentation at work, you're feeling like, you're going to get fired. And when you get fired, you cannot pay your rent or your mortgage. And then you're going to lose, where you live, and you're going to end up either in the basement with your parents or under a bridge. And so that domino effect of negative thinking, to stop it, you can really hijack your brain, your mind, by simply putting a question mark behind each of the negative thoughts. So you turn the thoughts you don't leave them in the statement form. You actually simply create questions out of them. Well, first of all, they are questions because the subconscious doesn't necessarily assume that it's right. It just puts out there possibilities. What about this? What about that? So there are questions, like little warning signals. It's like the dog, that's barking at the door because a mailman is coming. Now, the mailman is a mailman, but it could also be a burglar, or maybe the mailman is in financial trouble and becomes a burglar. So the dog is just saying, hey, there is somebody at the door. Is it okay? Is it okay? Is it okay? And, well, you as a dog owner have to calm the dog down. You cannot ignore it because it doesn't necessarily give the dog a sense of security. So having this message of whatevism or negativity as a question also gives you the sense of, I'm actually the one who is asked. And when you're asked a question, ask yourself a question. How old are you? Where do you live? Well, you notice your mind goes immediately focusing in on the answer. That's the hijacking of the brain. That's where, when there's a question asked, we are so trained, maybe from school, maybe just society in general. A question means I need to give an answer. A question means put all your neurons in line to find the solution or whatever the question is asking. So bring your brain, your mind to this one question, not to the 20 that may follow, the one question that's in front of you. And then imagine who you're talking to. Imagine that there's a smaller version of yourself, a 10-year-old, 12-year-old. We talked about this in the second session. And simply respond calmly from your heart, just like you would talk to a child. In ideally the we form, saying things like, we won't freeze. It's going to be okay at the presentation. We are prepared. We have done all the research. We also know these are friendly people. They are curious. The question is not, is it a performance, what I do? The question is, what can I do for them? How can I give them information that they need to move forward or get more clarity about whatever issue we are dealing with? So you're shifting from feeling like, oh my God, I'm going to get judged, to, no, I'm actually here on purpose. Or, the question about whether you're going to be always alone, and will we be always alone? And then you can answer calmly, no, we won't be always alone. And we are not alone because we already have each other. And the goal is right now to really create a very strong and healthy and loving relationship with ourselves. And then we can still be open to attract the person that is right for us, the person that we feel is really someone we want to share ourselves with. Or is this cancer? We can say, well, we have done this many times before. We went to the doctor, we got checked out, everything is fine. So let's just relax, just know that often this is a sign of wanting to control something and not feeling safe. And let's just observe it. And we can always come back in a couple of days and see if anything changed. So when you are just in this more calmer mindset and you're not afraid of your negative thoughts, and you're not really feeling that they tell you the truth or they're just annoying, but you really educate, coach this little self inside of you to see the world in a much more safe and also in a way it can trust in you perspective, you will see the negative self-talk drops down. It doesn't mean it's gone. I mean, I wrote in the Fear and Anxiety Solution book how, after quite some time of feeling really calm and confident and taking a lot of risks and changes, but really just knowing it's going to be okay, all of a sudden I was dealing with panic attacks and that sense of, is it going to be okay? Who's going to take care of us? And that was when my parents had died. And so I knew that was this little self inside of me that just had lost his parents. We have been freaking out about that, because for a part of me, parents meant there's always a place to go to. There's always a safety net there. These are the people that know me the longest and the best. And then they're gone. And so there was a part of me that felt definitely scared about that. But then the mature adult part just stepped in and in a visualization put his arm around this little self and said, hey, we are okay. I got you. Don't worry about it. It's something that we have been doing for a long time. We didn't need the parents since about 20 years. So we gonna be okay. It's sad that they're gone, but we are safe and I will never let you down. I mean, guess what? Within 5 minutes after waking up with a panic attack, I was calm and relaxed again and slept like a baby. It was kind of a really, really beautiful proof that it works. It really works when you create this inner relationship with this anxious voice where you open yourself up to go towards it rather than avoiding it or getting away from it. So negative self-talk is not anything that you have to really, feel is an issue that you're going to have to deal with for the rest of your life, but you cannot put it aside or ignore it or feel it's just a useless little monkey mind chatter, because it's not. It's really not. It just needs clarification, because a lot of anxiety is built on confusion about what had happened in the past and if it can happen again. And all you do is just to resolve the confusion. Now, that goes also with the secondary anxiety issue, which is really an issue in itself. And I want to just touch on that. But the secondary anxiety is so interesting because when I work with people on their anxiety and they make really, really great strides, enormous progress after, let's say, 6, 7, 8 sessions, they feel like, wow, I really dealt with all the root causes, clean slate on the past. I can see, who I'm going to grow into. And then there is this little voice inside of them saying, well, what if the anxiety comes back? What if I'm going to have a panic attack on the highway? What if I'm going to, all of a sudden feel like I'm fainting while I'm around people? So just because those things may have happened more recently, that's where the secondary anxiety says, what if it happens again? Now, the difference between the negative self-talk that's bubbling up and asking all these questions, those questions about what if the anxiety comes back are actually consciously created questions. They are not subconscious questions. They are the conscious questions we're asking ourselves because we don't necessarily trust our emotions. And that is what you really have to work on. You have to understand that if you are not trusting that what you have already accomplished by healing your past and really taking care of your anxious self, if you are just pretty much bulldozing over all of this and telling yourself, well, what if it doesn't work? What if it doesn't come back? Well, you're kind of recreating the sense of distrust and insecurity within yourself. And that can be an issue and bring anxiety back. So just notice, secondary anxiety is basically believing that whatever you already have so much evidence for may not be true. It's like not believing in, I don't know, that the sun comes up in the morning or gravity and just questioning. And we can drive ourselves crazy, of course. So if you feel secondary anxiety, just remind yourself, I know where my anxiety comes from. I know that this is a smaller self inside of me that's scared. I know what to do and how to respond to it. And I know all these panic attacks and everything that happened in the past was because I didn't pay attention. I just didn't want to deal with anxiety. But now I have really healed the anxiety. And so there's no need for me to be afraid of. So to get out of the negativity of secondary anxiety, also really keep your mind focused on the direction that you have chosen, a direction of feeling empowered, a direction of feeling that you're consciously collaborating, working together with your subconscious, and also feeling like, I know who is emerging from this anxiety container. I know who I am becoming. And that is what I want to focus on. And that person can deal with any emotions that comes up, and it can deal with anything that life's, on the life's path will appear, because this person feels that they have the resources inside of them to be able to not only stay safe, but also to thrive and to lead a life with joy and purpose. And that is not only the promise of when we are reimagining, rethinking anxiety, that is actually exactly what's going to happen if you take the steps that the anxiety is ultimately leading you towards. Self-discovery, and through self-discovery, a greater sense of self-belief and self-appreciation. And from that, a much greater sense of self-empowerment, because the things that you were avoiding or afraid of don't scare you any longer. Hi, Dr. Friedemann here. Thank you for tuning into my YouTube channel. If you're interested in learning more about fear and anxiety, here you'll find guided meditations, webinars, and interviews with some of the most renowned experts in the field of empowerment. Delve into the over 230 videos and more to come every week.